Well, hey everybody, it is Romania Black, and you may be sitting there wondering, this isn't the Apothecary Diaries. So, I currently, as you are watching this on Patreon, am at the national competition for the team that I coach. If you're on YouTube, this is technically the week afterwards, but I'm still catching up. So, because I was watching the Apothecary Diaries Season 2 week to week on the channel, and posting them on this day of the week, I am gone as this should come out. And so, because I'm gone away from my house and computer, I can't record the current episode that's coming out. So don't worry, if you are following me with the Apothecary Diaries Season 2, I will be returning next week with that episode, and I'll be catching up on the episodes that I've missed. So don't worry, it'll be fine. But I was like, I don't want to just leave a Wednesday with nothing happening. That's not me. So I have been watching Natsume's Book of Friends, which is an amazing series. I'm on season 5 of it currently as I'm recording this. You should go check it out. It is such a comfort show. If you need something just to wind down at the end of the day, or if you're feeling like you just need something to like hold on to and embrace, Natsume's Book of Friends is the way to go. But the creator of that series, as I've been reviewing the manga alongside the anime, they've done other works as well beyond Natsume's Book of Friends, and I'd heard that they had done an OVA called Hotarubi no Mori, and I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool to react to. And so I had it on my list being like, well, I'll get to it eventually. It's 45 minutes long. It won't be that bad. And then this came up where I needed something to kind of fill the spot on a Wednesday, and was like, I could just react to this. So I want to give a special shout out to the moderator for Natsume's Book of Friends, which is Plor, as well as the kind of pseudo fill-in moderator, Sunspots, because they both kind of tag team that series at various points. Because Sunspots was able to get me the OVA, a file for it, and Plor was able to give it to me, which I'm really glad, because as I'm recording this, a storm has just passed through last night, and the internet is kind of being wonky today, and I was like, so I thought I'd go ahead and record this and have it ready to come out while I'm gone. And that way you all can enjoy it, and just know that Apothecary Diaries will be back next week. Don't worry. But I'm really excited. I know nothing about this. All I know is that I think I read a little bit more about the general synopsis of it when I was reviewing the manga for Natsume's Book of Friends, but that's been a couple weeks and my brain has been elsewhere. So all I remember is that this is from the same creator as Natsume's Book of Friends, which I love, but I'm really excited to see what all this entails. It's just 45 minutes for an OVA. It's a standalone piece of work. It's based off of the mangaka of Natsume's Book of Friends kind of one-shots. So I'm curious to see what this will be. So I thank you all for being patient with me, and I hope you all enjoy this. It's something a little different on the channel for this month, but I wanted to give you all something on a Wednesday that we could all enjoy. So with that being said, we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive into Hotarubi no Mori and see what it is about. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And I'll have a link to the description and below for the reaction, and then we'll come back and discuss it. Let's go. Oh, this was bittersweet. But I should not be surprised that it's bittersweet, because the mangaka for Natsume's Book of Friends has such a talent. If you've not watched Natsume's Book of Friends, the vibe of this OVA is so that series, because it's heartwarming, it's heartfelt, it's humorous, it's adorable. It's also kind of like has little moments of intensity, but nothing too crazy. There's all these yokai designs that are so creative. There were so many trademarks of this OVA that it was like, oh, that's Natsume 1000%. But at the end of the day, it's all about connections and humanity and love. And it's just, there's such a yearning and angst with it, but it's not in a mean-spirited way ever. It's always like, it's angst with like a bittersweet nostalgic twist. And it's just, this was great. I loved this. It's very, the star-crossed lovers-esque, where it's like they can't be together for obvious reasons, but the way they resolve it at the end, it feels sad and bittersweet, but in a way that's not, it feels genuine and earned, right? So And then we start off with Geen up on the little. What I liked about it was from the very beginning of this, it was established that Geen was human, has humanity embedded into into their ghostly DNA, and so they just wanted to connect with someone. And even with all of the other yokai spirits around that were so kind to him and were just taking and looking after him, it had like a Jungle Book vibe where all of the animals in the forest were looking after Mowgli, but even they knew that he needed to go back to the people that he was from because that's where he belonged, and they all knew that. It had that vibe to it, which was great. But also Geen having connections to Kaoru from Neon Genesis Evangelion. It was there. The whole time I was watching, I was like, I see lots of connections. Also, anytime a character is named Geen, chances are they're going to have white hair. Chances are. It's just going to be how it works. That's just, because it means silver, right? Or silver hair. There were a lot of trademarks from Natsume's Book of Friends that were in this. The way that and you could say it was padding for time, but I don't. I think that what Natsume's mangaka does is create this kind of serene, tranquil environment. So things are allowed to settle. That's the one nice thing about Natsume's Book of Friends is that things are allowed to settle. They're allowed to kind of sit there and just meditate, and it's fine, and it's allowed to just kind of simmer on the surface, and it just kind of soaks in and you get to experience it. So there were moments where there were pauses and reflections, and the OVA gave you a little bit of chance for things to settle in. Like it's very well done. It was very intentional, the moments that they let things settle, and you could just kind of become one with the atmosphere of the OVA. Also, the yokai designs. This mangaka loves to put a mask on a humanoid face to make it a yokai, and I'm here for it. But the masks, the yokai designs, the idea of the festival that integrates humanity and yokai together unknowingly, there were so many elements that this OVA played with that I was like, that's taken directly from Natsume's Book of Friends, and I absolutely loved it. I also loved the concept of Hotaru. Hotaru was she was such a realized character where she was kind of aloof and everything, and going from a 6-year-old child that meets Geen and tries to, I loved the journey she went on from trying to immediately touch him, because that's what a 6-year-old would do. They were like, what do you mean I can't do this? I want to press all the buttons that you've told me not to press. And then as time goes on, she slowly develops this crush on him. She develops this crush on him where she, and you can't blame her because he looks so handsome. He's like got the silver hair. I also love the floral design on the shirt, which where the yokai got the shirts from, who knows? But the floral design on the shirt is, the mangaka loves a good floral design. They love a floral pattern. They're all about it. I love it too. But I love how she went from wanting to just the human curiosity of, oh, you told me not to do this, I want to do this, to her being like wanting to savor and be greedy and have all those moments with him savored. And then by the time she was in high school, she started to realize, oh, I want to touch him. He wants to touch me. We both know this is kind of fleeting. And once he tells his story, it's like, okay, why things are going down. I also appreciate Geen's character because he's so patient with her and he wants human contact, but he also understands that she can't touch him or he'll disappear, and he doesn't want to just, he does a lot of restraint too because he wants to get to know her. He doesn't want to just immediately disappear, right? And the forest spirits kind of tell him as such. I feel like as he got to know her, he wanted to build up to that moment of them going to the summer festival. Because when he first says, he's like, well, I wanted to take you when you were younger, but I didn't think you were ready. Right. And there were too many variables. Like, I liked the idea that he was patient enough to wait until they could go on a date at the summer festival, like with the things wrapped around the wrists that tied them together. If it had been red, it would have been too obvious. Right. But I liked that he thought, ahead of time, being like, oh, if she's a kid, she's going to get scared by the yokai, or she might accidentally bump into me, or she won't be old enough to be cautious. And then, or he's like, I haven't fully realized my feelings for her. The one thing, of course, they don't tell us, they tell us he ages slower than her. What they don't tell us is like, is this an Edward Cullen situation? How long has he been a yokai? Or he's not even been a yokai, but how long has he been, he ages slower. So how old is he actually really? We don't actually get confirmation of that. But this reminded me a lot of Spirited Away, like with Haku and Chihiro. But again, like this, there's a lot of spirituality in Natsume's Book of Friends, but it never feels, it never feels forced and it never feels preachy. It's not like the forest spirits and like all this. It is very much, it's just stated and it's addressed and it's just spoken as fact, and that's all there is to it. But there's this spirituality embedded in the series that you just feel it. You feel it like the moment they're clutching the piece of wood to connect them together, and the different talismans and stuff on the temple things, the shrines, and the idea of the festival. And there's just a spirituality that just feels so matter of fact in the series, and it's in this OVA. And Natsume's Book of Friends loves a green palette. So many greens, all the lusciousness of it. I love it takes place in summer where things are both luscious, but there's like a golden feel to it. And the feeling of the sunset and the summer day. Like, it's so nice. And I like the idea that he went from, what did he say? Because she said, tomorrow I'll bring you back a present. And when she was running away, he says it's Geen. Okay, so he did say his name from the beginning. Yeah, he said it's Geen, and then she turned back around. I thought that when the yokai discovered him as a baby, that he died as a baby and just stayed there as a spirit, which he kind of does. This forest spirit lets him live on there in the forest. I also like that the family was just totally fine with her running off and going in the forest. It feels like such a child thing to do. Like when you're a kid, you go visit like your grandparents or your relatives that live out in the country, and they're just like, they let you just run wild through the woods and stuff because they're like, well, you'll come back. But as she gets older, the uncle's kind of like, she keeps going in that forest. She really is into that forest. But I like that he never questions her. He's just like, okay, just keep going. The mom kind of trying to fat shame her. I didn't like that at all, but that feels very of its time if this was written in like the 2000s or the 2010s, because that's around the time Natsume's Book of Friends was created. I feel that I'm like, Mom, your daughter is skinny as hell. You just don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. I like how it came back, though, that they prefaced the summer festival. They kind of hinted that it was going to happen. And then by prefacing it, it all came full circle back around later on. I thought that was really smart. I liked that. We got to see that as well. The way that this focused on little things, like we see her cousins there, but it really was about Hotaru and Geen. It really was about them. There wasn't much other little side plots and side sublines that we had to worry about. I just watched a movie last week for Patreon that was one of the commissions, and it was a really good movie, but it was like 2 hours long, and there was probably like a 15-minute subplot that could have just been cut out, and it wouldn't have made that much difference to the story. But here, for 45 minutes, even though there are little tiny moments where they're just to establish atmosphere, they don't feel wasted and they don't feel unneeded. Like her tossing and turning, thinking about him. We get the little glimpses at the cousins, her putting the shoes on to show her like getting ready to see him. Like anime loves to show a shoe putting on montage, and I'm here for it because it's such a little mundane moment, but it means so much there, right? I love that. And her thinking about the forest where the mountain god and the spirits live, and she wants to go back and see Geen. And she brings him the popsicles. But I love their relationship of them just hanging out in the forest, talking to each other, and he wants to learn about her. And then the forest spirits. I like the idea of the fox spirit that looks very much like a Natsume Book of Friends yokai. And then he becomes a fox and runs away. At first I thought when Geen like scared off the fox spirit, I thought that maybe Geen was the mountain god, and it was kind of like a Kohaku moment. But it makes more sense with how it's described at the end of the OVA. It makes more sense there. But I just love Hotaru's character, how she's such a great foil to him, where he's very quiet and demure, but has these like feelings under the surface. And she's very much outwardly like just says what she thinks and feels what she feels all on the surface. They're such a good counter to each other, and it's really sweet. I love it. I also love the idea of the mask. So the Kakashi mask was great throughout. I love that he gets to take it off. And of course, they use that mask as a way for him to kiss her at the end. I was like, I thought that he was going to kiss her and that was going to be it. That he was going to be, that's how I did not anticipate him. I thought first that she was going to accidentally touch him at the end and make him disappear. Then I thought the more it went on, I was like, he really wants to touch her. He's going to touch her on accident. Whenever I thought when she was talking about staying there and getting a job there, I was like, oh girl, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I was like, oh, the way he was reacting, he was like, oh, I can't keep her here. Like, I'm going to keep her from living her life chasing a ghost that can't technically be with her. He's like, I don't want to do that to her because I'd feel awful doing that. So when that moment happened, I thought he was going to touch her. Then when we got to the festival and the kids were running by him, I was like, oh no, they're going to go to this festival and someone's going to grab him on accident and it's going to be this big thing. And then that didn't happen. And so I thought, okay, well, they're by themselves. Is he going to kiss her? And that's going to be the end. But then he put the mask on her and kissed her. And I was like, oh, well. And then he grabs the kid. And I was like, oh. And the thing about it is, he always wanted to touch a human, but he'd been told not to so much that he wasn't. And then in that moment, he wasn't even thinking about it because he was so used to her being careful and not touching him that he grabbed the kid. And it was foreshadowed when he went to grab her when she fell out of the tree and he didn't do it because she said no. And then it all came back. It all came back. I really wish she would have made him a flower crown when they were in the flower field, but she was also like 6. So we can't expect a 6-year-old to just make a flower crown. But yeah, I love that she let him take the mask off to see his face. Mm-hmm. And he has the silver eyes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The silver eyes marking him as not fully human. Mm-hmm. But I also love the idea that he wears the mask to mark himself as a yokai so that, you know, he can distinguish himself so that humans don't immediately just come up and grab him. Right? I also love the idea that this became a summer tradition where she came and saw him every summer from like when she was 6 to when she was like 15. So like nearly 10 years she came to see him every summer and she didn't want him to disappear. And she keeps on changing and growing older and he keeps on staying the same. But what's fun about it is, and what's not creepy about it is that he's never like forward with, she gets a crush on him, obviously, which can you blame her? But I like that he does not. He's very like just very neutral and like, I just want to have this time with you and develop this relationship. But even he starts to realize that he needs to let her go, that they need to let each other go, that she needs to move forward and grow up without him. And it might be time, you know, he's been on borrowed time. It might be time for him to move on as well. I hope he doesn't get obliterated and go to oblivion. I hope he's able to watch over her, like even though he's not in the forest. And I do like the idea that Geen, he never complains about his existence. You know, he was kind of on borrowed time from the start, that he had been. Also, who would abandon the baby in the forest with a damn bottle of milk? They left a bottle of milk in the basket, but they left that baby in the forest? How dare you? Like, who does that? I say that knowing actively that there are people like that that do that. But him with the butterfly on the mask and him just kind of savoring up the summers with her. Oh, I also love whenever he saw this was like the flight of the fireflies. I thought of Grave of the Fireflies and I was like, oh, this is going to be really sad. And it was sad, but I liked that I was surprised they really didn't, because her name means firefly. I'm surprised that they didn't kind of go all in on that metaphor. But then when he evaporates at the end and turns into fireflies, that's when it hits you. And it's like, oh. And of course it's like all the greens and it's so good. But yeah, she's like, and I like that even as she's in middle school, she's thinking about, you know, someday I'm going to be older than him. And am I going to keep coming to see him? What's that going to be like, you know? And so then the uncle talks about getting cold in the winter. And she has the aunt and the mom, I'm sure, get him a souvenir scarf to take then. I also really liked the one little side plot that I kind of liked that made me, that they did, was this one kid comes in who's in the protagonist seat of the classroom. I'm watching a series called Dan to Dan, and in that series, someone pointed out that in most anime, the characters that are in that back corner of the room, like the back corner towards the window, are in the protagonist seat, meaning that they're in the seat of typically the protagonist of a series. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, this kid that knows Hotaru, he sits in that same seat. This is the side plot that I really liked, and I think it is necessary to show that there is like a way for Hotaru to move forward. Like, this guy clearly likes her, and he clearly has a crush on her, but he's being so sweet. Like he's like, hey, what's up? He doesn't judge her. He's just like, hey, are you okay? He's like, you're gonna miss your class. And then they talk about the weather coming in, and she gets worried about him and that he's gonna get cold. And then when he passes by and says good morning, he's like, oh, hey, you're gonna slip on that ice. And he holds out his hand to her. And at that moment, because we're over halfway through the OVA, it creates this contrast of she can never touch Geen, because once she does and has made that connection, he's going to move on and she won't have him in her life anymore. But there is like a way for her to move forward, and there's literally a guy right here holding out his hand being like, hey, I'll help you. It's fine. And she grabs his hand and is able to touch his hand because he's human and move forward. So I fully believe that this guy that grabs her hand while he's blushing and looking forward, like, oh, it's cold today. I fully believe she'll be able to move forward with him and maybe develop a relationship with him. And I really liked the way they handled that little subplot of including him in the story. I thought that was really sweet. But yeah, he's like, haven't you been a little bit out of it lately? But he's like, but you've always been that way, so it's fine. And she's like, I need to go see Geen. And I love the two poppies in the snow. Like, that's such good symbolism of the two of them there. So she goes back in her high school uniform, starting high school. And she's like, when I graduate in 3 years, I'm going to look for a job here. And then I'll be able to spend all the seasons with you. And at that point, I do like that Geen recognizes, kind of like she has, but she's been in denial of it. He's like, you're going to keep coming back here and spending all your time with me, which is fine. I love you. But I also, because I love you, I don't want to put you through that, because I'm going to want to touch you. And I don't want you to waste, having your job over here when as soon as I touch you, I'm going to disappear. And so I thought that was really responsible of Geen to not lead her on when he knows that there's not longevity to their relationship. And it's all a big metaphor for coming of age. It's a big metaphor for growing up and from moving on and from having that relationship or that nostalgia of when you're a kid, but it can't last forever. It's like the summer is special for a reason, because it doesn't last all year long. And so also the yokai find baby Geen out in the forest, the concerned looks on their faces, they were so sweet. They were so concerned. They were so adorable. They were so cute. I was like, oh, these little yokai are being so sad about this baby. And I love the symbolism of them when they put the mask on the baby that lets him be part of the forest. Like, he doesn't die, but he technically does and stays imbued in the forest. Like he dies, but his spirit lives on there in the forest. And they're all so happy that he's there. Uh-huh. Aww. And they're like, yay! But he's like, I can't move on. So if you want to forget about me, that's fine. I loved the contrast here. He's like, I can't move on unless I touch a human, and then I'll be gone. He's like, so if you want to forget about me, it's okay. He's like, if that makes it easier for you to move on, to forget about me. And I love that she's like, no. She's like, even if you move on, I'm never forgetting about you, because you're a part of my childhood that I love, and I don't want to forget that. I love the message. It's so subtle, but it's also right there in front of you. The message of there are sad things that happen as you grow up, but those sad things should not necessarily be forgotten because there's love attached to them. So even though they are sad, there's still the fact that you connected with someone, the fact that you loved them. You shouldn't forget that. You should carry that with you and keep moving forward with it. And again, the movie I watched for the commission last week kind of had that theme too. So I'm like, damn, what are y'all trying to tell me? It was just, it was so sweet. And that's when he's like, and she even says, time may separate us. Or maybe he said it, time may separate us one day. Or she says it, but even still, I want to be with Geen. I like that she was also self-aware. She wasn't like one of those characters that's like, oh, we'll be together forever and nothing will ever separate us. And I was like, girl, yeah. I'm glad she was self-aware and knew that their time was finite and limited, and that at some point, it wasn't going to last. And I kind of liked that it ended here, because I was also wondering if it would keep going and she would like see him up until she was older. And I doubt that he wanted to see her die of old age. That's the last thing he would want. And so I liked that they both, in the springtime of their youth, at the peak of their relationship, that's when they say goodbye. They don't let it drag out. They don't let it fade away. It's just like a big burst, like of youth and summer, right? I also like when they're fishing on the rock. It's where he was by himself at the beginning of the OVA, and then the two of them are together, and then they go to the festival. I love it. I love the koi fish. This feels so Natsume. All the kids and the yokai blending together, and then pulling out the thing to tie on. I wish it was red, like a red string of fate, but that probably would have been too on the nose. But I love it. And the fireworks, the cotton candy that floats, the show where it turns out to be a yokai and then there are kids. I think it's so cute. I do love the one guy that didn't have the mask on that was next to the masks. Like, really? He was like, oh, okay, I see how it is. And then as they walk back together, I like that it's so intimate. They have this moment to themselves. And then as they walk, he's like, yeah, every time summer comes around, he's like, I can no longer wait for summer to come around. When I'm away from you, even though I can't be around crowds, I want to go see you. And I think at that point, he's like, I've reached the point where I love you so much. I'm getting to the point where I can't stay in this forest. And that's a problem because I'm going to bump into somebody and you're not going to be around. I'm going to disappear without being able to say goodbye to you. So I don't want to do that. So we need to end it now because I've just reached a point where I can't not be with you. And that kiss, just, and he looks at the way they draw him. It's so Natsume, which is funny because in the manga for Natsume, Natsume has silver hair like this. It's just the anime makes his hair like reddish blonde. So I just, I did want to find that out though. Does Natsume, the Hotarubi VA, what is it? Yeah, the behind the voice actors for this. I want to see what it is. I've got a hotspot going right now, so I can pull up the internet very gently just on the hotspot. This was in 2011, y'all. This was 14 years ago. Oh my gosh. Okay. So it was Koki Uchiyama that's Gin. Okay. And then Ayane Sakura is Hotaru. I'm gonna pull her up. I feel like I recognize voices, but then I'm the worst at identifying them of who they are, you know, as one would. So Hotaru's voice actress, she has been in a bunch of things. She's Ira in Dan to Dan. There we go. And she's Ochako in My Hero Academia. Okay, yep, that all makes sense. And then, okay, I mean, I'm like Uchiyama, as if we need, is Rin from, from Blue Lock. But he is also, Tsukishima from, Haikyuu, and he's also Shigaraki from My Hero Academia, you know, as one does. And then he also is Inumaki from Jujutsu Kaisen. He's been in a bunch of things, but I was like, I know that voice. I know it. I always get Uchiyama, I get him and Ash Lynx's voice actor confused all the time. And they are very different people and they have very different voices. But for some reason, I confuse their voices all the time. And I don't know why. But I thought he was Levi's voice actor and Natsume's voice actor in this, which was wrong too. So I swear, unless it's Junichi Suabe, unless it's them and Suda, or Hosoya, those three I can identify pretty easily. But other than Kamiya, I'm sorry, I confused you there. But I can't believe the kid showed up and that's what he touched. I do love in that moment though, the one thing about him touching the kid, and that's why he disappeared, the reason why it works for me so well is because I thought for a hot second that if she touched him, the spirits of the forest would be mad at her because they told her not to do it. And then she said she wouldn't do it. And then he said he wouldn't touch her. And so the kid being the third party allowed for it to be okay. It allowed for it not to be her fault, not to be his fault. It allowed it to be the kid And that allowed for it all to be okay in the end. And the forest spirit people, I like they weren't mad. Because at first I thought, oh my God, they're going to be mad at her and it's going to be this big negative thing. And they were like, no. They're like, we kind of know that he wanted to interact with humans and we kept holding him back because we wanted to hold on to him forever, just like you did. But good things can't last forever. So they're like, we're okay that you finally got to touch him in the end, even if it wasn't entirely under the circumstances that you wanted. And I love that she just held him and it was this, and she was so happy in that moment, like, oh, I get to hold you. And oh, I just love that they got to hold each other and they were so happy. Like it wasn't this horribly sad thing until it was over. It was like, it was this beautiful moment between them and they were both so happy. It was so sweet. I loved it so much. And then of course, and then he was gone. I love that he evaporates like the fireflies. And she says, I won't look forward to summer for a long time because I'm going to be crying too much. But this warmth in my hands and the summer memories will live on in my heart. And again, Natsume and their mangaka, she's so good at touching into that nostalgia, and it's bittersweet and it's sad, but it's not sad in like a melancholy, melodramatic way. It's not melodramatic, like so sad that you just feel anguish. It's just this bittersweet. It's sad, but it's like a warm sad. It's hard to describe. But yeah, like you feel the nostalgic and bittersweet nature of it, but it's not like, oh, I'm going to cry my eyes out for the rest of, or maybe you did. Maybe you did cry at this OVA. I'm so used to Natsume's Book of Friends making me cry. I was like, not today. But I thought this was so sweet. Right on target, right on point with the emotions one would expect from the mangaka of Natsume's Book of Friends. So I really enjoyed this. This was wonderful. I'm so glad I got to watch this. I'm so glad you all got to see it alongside me. Like I said, next week, don't worry, Apothecary Diaries will be back. Episode 13 of season 2 will be back. And so we'll get to that. But in the meantime, I hope you all enjoyed this. I'm excited to hear your thoughts about it down below. If Geen was your first anime crush, I don't blame you because I can't believe this is 14 years old. Wild. But anyway, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with more reactions. Bye.